My husband and I have been married for 20 years. Our son started college this year and moved out. Life with just the two of us is going fairly well. My husband formed a baseball team with his colleagues and spends his weekends from morning till evening at practice. I keep busy with a part-time job and going to yoga with friends. I think we are a typical couple for our age. One day, a message from a yoga friend popped up.
Hey, I'm at the train station right now. Isn't this your husband?
With trepidation, I opened the photo to see my husband holding hands with another woman. My heart raced. He said he was going to practice for a game today. Could that have been a lie? My friend texted, "What will you do? Want to come here?" After some thought, I replied, "No, it's okay. I'll talk to him." What should I do? I'm scared to ask my husband. What if he really is cheating? Divorce at this age. Can I just pretend not to know and keep living peacefully as before? I found myself agonizing over these farts. Coming back to my senses, it was already 7 p.m.
What's up? You're sitting in the dark.
My husband, who had just come home, turned on the living room light and said with a bemused look, "Oh, sorry, I must have dozed off," when I tried to cover it up. My husband just laughed and started washing his workout clothes. That made me think he really had been at practice. Maybe that photo was just a mistake. Did you go anywhere else today besides baseball practice?
Nowhere special.
I thought maybe you went to buy those new shoes you wanted.
Oh, that's right. I haven't gotten around to that yet.
The conversation ended there. He seemed as usual, so maybe the person in the photo was someone else, but I still had my doubts when he came home late from work or when he had to stay overnight on sudden business trips. When bad things start, they seem to keep coming. One day, on my way home from my part-time job, I stopped by the supermarket. Then, my phone rang. It was from my brother, David. It had been years since we last spoke on the phone. He told me that our father wasn't in good health. My father had collapsed suddenly at work and was rushed to the hospital for a thorough checkup, where they said he might not have much time left. Our mother had passed away a few years ago, and our father, now alone, had turned down the offer to move in with David and his wife, insisting on living by himself. He had sounded fine when we talked over the phone just last week, so it was a shock. I promised to visit him soon and hung up. That night, when I told my husband about my father, he looked sad.
So, your dad's not doing well. Don't worry about our home. Go see him.
He was kind about it. Encouraged by my husband, I went to see my father the next day.
I just got dizzy all of a sudden and couldn't get up. Guess I can beat aging. Sorry to worry you.
My usually loud father spoke weakly.
Something wrong? Did you have a fight against your husband?
I panicked when my dad asked. He gave a wry smile.
You're like your mom, keeping things inside. We don't know what the future holds, so live as you feel. Parents are happy seeing their kids' smiles.
That struck a chord with me. I wanted to talk more, but he said he was tired, so I decided to leave for the day. It was only about 15 minutes, but it brought me to tears seeing how weak he had become. While waiting for my tears to stop on a sofa near my dad's hospital room, a man in a white coat sat next to me.
"Excuse me, but are you his daughter? I'm in charge of his care."
The doctor in charge of my father addressed to me. I hastily wiped my tears.
"No rush, take your time. It must have been a shock. Any questions?"
He kindly answered my questions about my dad's condition and what to expect. He stayed with me until a nurse came to call him, which was very soothing. Then I went home and decided to talk to the friend who had sent me the photo.
I was worried I'd caused you unnecessary pain. I'm sorry.
No, I'm glad you told me. I'm finally ready to face my husband's infidelity, but I have no clue what to do. She laughed reassuringly and said,
Actually, my husband is a lawyer. Let me ask him for you.
I felt relieved. She quickly gave me the details of a detective agency and even offered to go with me if I felt anxious. Meanwhile, I was busy with visiting my dad and working part-time. At the same time, my husband said he was getting busier with work, with more late nights and business trips. His suspicious behavior made me anxiously await the investigation results. 2 weeks later, at the detective agency, the investigator hesitantly said, "It's clear-cut," allowing me to face reality without turmoil. In fact, I felt a sense of relief. After seeing some of the numerous photos and hearing the explanation of his activities over the past 2 weeks, and listening to the audio recordings, it was indeed awful. Apparently, baseball practice was only once a week, for 2 hours in the morning, and the other employees would quickly go home to their families. My husband was spending the rest of his time with his mistress, who sometimes waited for him at a cafe near the baseball field. It seems he even washed his practice clothes on purpose. All his late work hours and business trips were lies. He was with her. The most shocking thing was what my husband said to his mistress.
Once my father-in-law's condition worsens and we get the inheritance, we'll divorce right away. He probably won't last another month. So let's reserve that apartment near the station now.
I found out that this was what he had told her. He was busy lately because he was starting to prepare for a new life, even reserving furniture and appliances. They even had plans for a pre-marriage trip next month, which made me dizzy. The thought of my husband waiting for my father to pass away deeply affected me. It was enough to lose all affection for him. I felt no sadness, just a strong desire to divorce as soon as possible. I paid a large amount to the detective agency, took all the data, and stored it at a friend's house just in case. Then my friend introduced me to a lawyer. I had spent all my money on the detective agency, and I was anxious about touching our savings as it might affect the divorce proceedings. Eventually, I swallowed my pride and talked to my brother, David. David scolded me for not consulting him sooner, but kindly offered to lend me the money for the lawyer. After discussing with the lawyer, I also talked to my part-time job about working more hours or full-time, and they said I could work as a contractor. I managed to sort out my finances. Now, how should I confront him about the divorce? Then one midnight, I got a call from David. My father had passed away. I woke my sleeping husband, and we both went to the hospital. My husband briefly met with my father and greeted David and his wife.
Take your time to say goodbye,
He said to me before heading home alone. After that, the funeral and greeting relatives kept me too busy to grieve. David and his wife were exhausted too. My husband, as usual, didn't help and went to his baseball practice even just after my father passed away. David and his wife were dismayed, but knew I was firm in my decision to divorce, so they didn't say anything, which I appreciated. I had been putting off the divorce because there was too much going on. Things really started moving about 6 months later. All the procedures related to my father were finally settled, and the inheritance amount was confirmed.
Has your father's inheritance come in yet?
It's scheduled for tomorrow. But why?
Well, your father was an executive at a big company, so I was wondering how much the inheritance would be.
I heard it's around $700,000. My husband looked surprised.
That much? He must have saved a lot.
I got a call from the lawyer today saying everything is ready. It will be transferred tomorrow, so let's go out for something nice to eat. I emphasized the transfer happening the next day with a smile. After my husband went to work the next day, I left the bank book and the necessary documents for withdrawal on the desk before I went to work. When I came back from work, sure enough, the bank book and documents were gone, and there was a completed divorce form left behind. I was surprised at how smoothly everything went. I headed to the lawyer I had hired to explain the situation and went straight to my parents' house without returning home. Most of my belongings were already moved. What to do with the shared items at our house, we would decide later. Since the divorce form was submitted, and my ex-husband and his mistress would probably live there, I won't be contacting him anymore. 3 days later, my ex-husband called.
What the hell is going on? There's no money in the account. Where did the inheritance go? And where are you?
I deliberately match his tone. The inheritance is mine. Why should you use it? It seems he was back at our house. I need to contact the lawyer immediately.
Why isn't the $700,000 in your account?
Did you take my bank book? I was planning to change the account for direct deposit for my salary. I intended to use the dormant bank account.
Don't joke with me. We're married, so it's shared property. Give it to me.
My ex-husband yelled over the phone. The inheritance is personal property, not shared. Besides, I've already filed for divorce, so we're not married anymore. Don't contact me again. You can live with your mistress at our house. It's fine by me. Bye. After saying that, I could hear my ex-husband gasping on the phone, and I hung up unilaterally. I immediately informed the lawyer's office of my ex-husband's whereabouts. I ignored all incoming calls from him. Many times over, reflecting on the tough year I had endured, I marveled at how peaceful I felt now. One day, I was surprised by the sheer number of messages and checked each one.
What's this about alimony? If you knew about the affair, you should have just said so. Sorry, it was my fault. I want to talk things over.
They were complaints and apologies. I didn't reply, just left my phone sitting there and headed to work. In my bag was a new cell phone that I would use from now on. Later, my lawyer said he insists on meeting you, so we arranged a direct confrontation. I chose a public place because I didn't want to meet somewhere secluded. My ex-husband and his mistress arrived on time. He looked tired. It had been about a month since I last saw him. This was my first time seeing the mistress in person. She was a cute young woman in her mid-20s, dressed casually, working at a pastry shop. As I had found out from the investigation, my ex-husband seemed confused, and my lawyer and I couldn't help but smirk. The inheritance was left to me by my father, and you have no right to it. As for alimony, it's due because the divorce was caused by your affair, which hurt me. I explained.
It's not because of the affair. It's a mismatch of personalities. Besides, you didn't initiate the divorce. I did, so the affair shouldn't matter.
My ex-husband argued. I didn't think you lacked common sense to this extent. A person at fault can't initiate a divorce. It's not about who starts it. You're at fault because you had the affair. And I will also claim alimony from her. She exclaimed, "What? Why should I pay?" and stormed out of the cafe, grabbing her purse. The other customers turned their attention to our table, but the lawyer assured, "We know where she works, so it's all good," making my ex-husband go pale.
You know, that girl is quite strong-willed. When we were having the affair, she was such a sweetie. Always smiling, and she would cry saying she's sad when it's time for me to leave.
My ex-husband began to ramble, making excuses, which was awkward to respond to.
Her cooking isn't good, and she's so demanding. It was cute before, but it's been quite a hassle since we get married.
He continued to complain about her, revealing their issues. And they've only been married for about a month.
I've realized something. I've always been comparing her to you. You were good at housework, cooked delicious meals, and always waited for me to come home. Can we start over?
I was appalled at my ex-husband's words, and even the lawyer was at a loss for words. It's out of the question. I can't trust you at all. My ex-husband kept begging for another chance. After all, There was about a month from when my father got sick until he passed, but you never visited once. You were cheating even when I was going through such a hard time. And after he died, all you could think about was the inheritance, right? There were several attempts to open the bank book. You probably planned to take it and leave the filled-out divorce papers once the inheritance came in. My ex-husband started shaking as I laid out the facts. You're probably thinking you won't have to pay alimony if we remarry, right? At that, my ex-husband fell silent. It was a sore point, and he seemed to crumble in shame. If there's nothing more to say, I'm leaving.
You're the most important person to me. Please, let's start over.
He pleaded in tears. Stop. It's embarrassing. You're newlyweds, so you should talk it over with her.
Actually, she's been cheating on me. Seems like she married me for my money.
My ex-husband broke down and cried. I left him crying, grabbed the bill, and the lawyer and I walked out of the cafe. Later, as both of them were making a fuss about not paying alimony, I called my in-laws for advice. It had been a while since I spoke to my distant in-laws, whom I had thanked for attending my father's funeral. It turned out my ex-husband hadn't told his parents anything about the divorce or his remarriage. My in-laws were shocked, so I gave up relying on them. But the next day, my father-in-law brought his brother to confront my ex-husband. My father-in-law's brother, quite the opposite of my father-in-law, is a boisterous man. My ex-husband always complained about him, but he became a strong ally in getting the alimony paid. My father-in-law apologized and told me they decided to take my ex-husband back to the countryside, as my in-laws are over 80 with no income. They promised to make my ex-husband work at a relative's factory nearby and pay me the alimony. As for the mistress, she had unilaterally handed him a divorce notice. When I reluctantly contacted her workplace, I ended up talking to a woman claiming to be the store manager, who informed me of the shocking truth. The person the mistress was accused of cheating with was the store manager's husband. She assured me, I'm preparing to sue. Don't worry, we won't let her get away. True to her word, a few months later, the alimony was deposited. When I went to her workplace to express my thanks, the mistress was nowhere to be found. I learned that she's now working multiple jobs to pay off the alimony, and at this time, she was at a nearby construction site. Out of curiosity, I took a look and saw the mistress, her pretty face bare of makeup, sweating, and being scolded by an older man while working. She must owe a substantial amount of money. I believe she's facing the consequences of destroying someone's home. My son was quite surprised when I told him about the divorce, but he said, "It's your life, Mom. You should do what makes you happy," which was a relief. I still want to cherish each day as it comes,